Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for looking at my intro video there. I was a little choppy. My name is Tim Kane. I'm a registered nurse. Welcome to Legal Nurse Talks, where we discuss issues with people from the medical legal arena about medical legal issues. We like to do this a couple times a month, and we have some great, interesting conversations with interesting people. Today, we have a real special guest. His name is Dan Miller. Dan Miller is a whistleblower specialist attorney. He'll explain more about that. Dan basically deals in a lot of healthcare fraud, any fraud that deals with the government and issues like that. In fact, I'm going to go and review his bio with you and then bring him out. Dan has an impressive resume, very much. I'm on his website. Dan basically has done numerous lawsuits and represents whistleblowers nationwide in state and federal False Claims Act. I heard that used to be called the Lincoln Law, and it's called the False Claim Act now. And in cases under the IRS and the SEC and the CFTC whistleblower programs. Prior to joining his current firm, Dan led one of the largest whistleblower practice groups in the United States for 10 years. This is important. During this time, he was lead counsel on a series of successful cases across the country, which returned hundreds of millions of dollars to various federal and state governments. Through this work, Dan earned a national reputation for successfully litigating cases that were initially declined by the government. Now in private practice, Dan utilizes his relationships with government prosecutors, his trial experience, and has a deep understanding of the whistleblower process to deliver outstanding results for clients. Awesome. Let's bring Dan out. And he can join us. We're very excited. And any questions, please put questions in the comment section, and Dan and I will get to them. Welcome, Dan Miller. Hi, Dan.
Thanks, Tim. Hi there. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Good, thanks. And things are great in Buffalo, New York. I know you're in the East. Whereabouts in the United States are you right now?
I'm in Philly right now. Beautiful day here, about 70 degrees and sunny, and enjoying this before the cold sets in.
Wow. Well, we're having some nice weather in the Northeast, but I don't know how long it'll last. But Dan, our participants just heard me summarize your biography. Is there anything I missed or anything that you would like to add?
No, you got most of it. I would say, I got into this line of work through being a government prosecutor, meaning I did healthcare fraud cases for the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit in the Attorney General's office. And I saw how much rampant fraud was occurring in our healthcare system in the United States. Medicare and Medicaid and other government programs just getting ripped off left and right, both by large entities like pharma companies and hospitals, but also smaller entities like specialty physician practices, nursing homes, pharmacies, just anywhere you looked, pretty much you could find it. And that's what I was receiving, the way the False Claims Act works, and we'll get into that a little bit more. That's when I was receiving these whistleblower complaints and carrying them forward from there. And lawyers were bringing them to me, private lawyers, and that's what I do now. I'm on the other side. I left the government in 2010, and for the last 14 years, I've been bringing these whistleblower cases to government prosecutors, and we've had a bunch of successes, both for the healthcare, the patients in this country are better for it. And also we bring back money to the government and the taxpayers.
So you're representing private citizens that have complaints about healthcare related issues, and that in the end benefits all patient care and the government and the claimant themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, you have kickback cases and medical necessity cases. I'm sure a lot of the people listening have heard about medical necessity fraud, where physicians in some instances who have lost sight of their mission of caring for patients are performing procedures that aren't necessary. Like, for example, we had a big case involving stents, cardiac stents being placed when they didn't need to be placed, pacemakers being and defibrillators being inserted when they didn't need to be. And there's all sorts of medically unnecessary care occurring in hospitals in other areas. Also, it's rampant because there's so much money involved.
That's a shame. So, I mean, we all put that. I've told people this in my nursing practice for years, that it's a shame that we have to put our faith in people. You know, when you go to an ER or when you go to a physician, that you really have no idea who they are. So if we hear a doctor tells me, you know, Tim, you need a stent, I'm just going to take his word for it and go get it. But then the thought that just he may be saying that to me for his money making purposes just blows my mind.
No, it's horrific. I mean, but again, you have to remember, and I don't want to indict the whole healthcare system. You know, the great majority of physicians are doing things for the right reasons. But like any industry, it doesn't matter if it's medicine, the law, construction, anything. You're going to have a small percentage of people who are profit motivated. And big companies target in the healthcare world, big companies, pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, they target those physicians. So if you had any idea, most of the public had any idea how much money goes when the doctor, diagnoses you, let's say correctly, with a cholesterol problem, how much money goes into the decision that doctor is going to make when they write the prescription, which drug are they going to pick? There's been 7 pharmaceutical companies that manufacture statins that treat cholesterol, and they're competing for that. What prescription, what name of what drug is going to go on that piece of paper? And they try in every which way to influence physicians. And most physicians just blow that off and they do the right thing for the patients. But the small percentage of them that don't, that's who the drug companies are looking for.
Wow, that's interesting. It's funny you say that about the prescriptions, because I used to work in an urgent care. I mean, this isn't fraud or anything, but every day drug reps would be in, and then they would provide lunch and all these like nice. This is early 2000s, nice little niceties for all of us. And the docs, that would be the prescription they'd write for the day. You know?
There you go. I mean, that in itself, believe it or not, is illegal.
Right.
Even though it's just a lunch and learn, and if it influences the prescription writing or whatever orders that a doctor or healthcare provider writes, then that's illegal.
I didn't say anything. I wish I did, because I started to put 2 and 2 together, because I would do the discharging of all the patients and I would have the paper prescriptions and I would just see the pattern each day. It's like, okay, apparently this is the drug of the day because that was lunch. Yeah. But that's a whole nother story.
Well, there's much deeper, in the pharma world, that, there's cultivation. It's almost like grooming, where the physicians will be offered opportunities to, we've all been to a nice restaurant where you look up and there's a group of 10 or so or 15 people dressed up nice, and there's somebody doing a presentation, and, it's normally a group of doctors, and there's one doctor presenting on behalf of a drug company to that group of doctors on a particular drug product. They're getting paid a lot of money to do that. And a lot of times during those presentations, there'll be off-label marketing, messages that are delivered, all sorts of crazy stuff that happens in those dinner meetings.
We used to go to those dinners. You know what the doc would say? I'm going, but I want my nurses to come with me. Oh, it would be open bar. It would be top of the line steaks. I mean, of course, but that's another.
That was 20 years ago.
Right.
Back when I would say pharma was running a little bit wild, and the government is actually, as much as I'm critical of the government from time to time, the government has actually done a pretty darn good job with pharma. I would say back in those days, the late 90s, early 2000s, even the 2010s, pharma was speeding in the left lane at 95 miles an hour with their lights off. And now they're in the right lane. They're going 5 miles an hour over the limit, and they have their lights are on. Like they're
very careful.
They're still pressing the boundaries, but they've gotten much, much more compliant.
Yeah, all my stories I'm referring to are 2001 and 2002. When I
right.
first got into
Don't worry, the statute of limitations is run.
Good, good. Can you tell us a bit more, if you haven't already, about your experiences in sectors of the healthcare system which is most of our audience, nurses and nurse practitioners?
Yeah, so healthcare fraud is a very broad statement, or very, very broad concept. It's any kind of conduct which causes a financial damage to the government or private insurers. But in the whistleblower world, it's primarily we're looking out for the government's money. So whenever Medicaid or Medicare or TRICARE or Federal Employees Health Benefit Program, whenever any of those entities are paying more than they otherwise should have, then you've got a risk there. So, for example, everyone knows E&M, Evaluation and Management Codes, 99211 through 99215, and you get paid a very modest amount of money for a short 99211 visit, but a much more expansive amount of money for a 99215, and same in between. So you can have your classic upcoding, where a physician or someone working out for the physician at their direction is coding very short visits where the physician has almost 1 to 2 minutes of FaceTime with the patient as a 99214 or 215, and getting paid 3 or 4 times what they should be paid, which is a 99211 or 99212. So that's upcoding, and that happens, with any physician who's willing to do it. Most don't. Again, we're talking about the bad apples here, and most don't. Most physicians are absolutely in it for the right reasons, but some are not. You have medically unnecessary services that we just talked about. Doctors, treating patients. I've cases right now where we have down in Florida, it's rampant, where doctors are certain dermatologists are conducting radiation on patients when the patients don't actually have cancer. So they'll recommend to the patient that you need to get these biopsies, and they'll take the biopsy samples. They're in cahoots with a local pathology lab. They send it to the pathology lab. The pathology lab diagnoses, basal or some type of skin cancer. Comes back. Doctor tells the patient, "You've got skin cancer." They have to come in, and they radiate them. And the patient actually doesn't have cancer, but the radiation might give them cancer. We've had cases like that. We had a physician go to jail for that exact conduct that I just relayed. So that, medically unnecessary conduct, that's an extreme, I realize, but it's an example that really, gets to the heart of the matter. There's tons of stuff that happens in hospitals where there are, hospitals make money by filling their ORs with patients, filling their beds with patients. And the more expensive surgeries are going to be your neurosurgeries and your cardiology surgeries. And so those two areas are probably the most problematic, I would say, in general. And whenever you've got groups of private physicians working in a market where they have a choice of which hospitals where they're going to do surgeries or other procedures, you're going to have hospitals, some of them, that are willing to stretch to make the physician refer or choose their hospital over a competitor hospital by offering them something of value, whether it's decreased rent or some sort of on-call privileges, or in order to get more patients, something to induce the doctor to bring the patient, admit their patient to that hospital versus the competitor. And those arrangements are happening across the country right now. And I've probably had at least a dozen cases where that type of conduct has been unearthed.
Amazing. I just want to kind of ride your coattails and something and reiterate, like you said, these are just when we're speaking on the physicians, this is just a few bad apples of a very good healthcare system. That they'll always say, like, when law enforcement gets in trouble, it's not every cop. It's just there's a few bad apples in every section of every occupation in the world, and that's what we're discussing today, is the bad apples, not the whole system in general.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Cool.
I mean,
Oh,
there's all right, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
There's a giant report out today from HHS OIG, Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, addressing fraud in the Medicare Advantage program. And the fraud here is Medicare Advantage is effectively managed care. So Medicare, there's Medicare fee for service, traditional Medicare, where if you have traditional Medicare, you go to a doctor, you
Right.
hand them your Medicare card, and the doctor bills Medicare directly, and that's a fee, and Medicare pays a fee for the service. So it's a very direct sort of relationship. Medicare Advantage or managed care is where CMS, Medicare, pays a private insurer. Let's pick on United Healthcare because it's the biggest of those in the country. And they pay them a certain amount of money per month for each patient, a certain amount of money to pay the bills. So instead of the doctor billing or the hospital billing Medicare directly, they bill United, and then United gets the monthly payments from Medicare. And so how does United make money? Or any legally, there's a legal way to do it, which is you provide that care for less money than you're getting from the government. So if you're getting $5,000 a month for this individual patient and you're able to provide care for $3,000 a month, you make $2,000 a month on that patient. Perfectly legal. But who determines the $5,000? There's a thing called a risk score. And the risk score is how sick is this patient? What diagnoses has this patient accrued over their healthcare lifetime? Do they have high blood pressure? Do they have high cholesterol? Have they had a cardiac event? And each diagnosis makes the patient more risky because they have to get more care. So if an insurer, and I'm not speaking to United right now, but any insurer can have a patient diagnosed with a condition that they don't have, then they're going to make money. Right. So there's a financial incentive for insurers to find diagnoses. And the report out today, it speaks to that, and it identifies potential problem areas where home health assessments are being conducted by private insurers, allegedly for the benefit of the patient to see what conditions they have. And maybe that's partly true, but it's also true that many diagnoses are being made in the home that don't pan out when the medical records are reviewed. In other words, there's diagnoses that are being added to the patient's risk score and raising the amount of money that Medicare is paying. But when you look at the patient's actual medical records, that's not always true that they have the new diagnosis. And it's really scary what is going on out there.
That is scary. And it's good that, there's an effort like what you're undertaking, and I'm sure a lot of other attorneys do, to try to keep that in check. I mean, because the bottom line, the people that pay for all that over time is society. The rest of us do. We pay that.
The taxpayer.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, the rest.
Yeah, it comes straight from your federal and state taxes. That's where that money goes.
Incredible. Okay, so when we were prepping for this event, Dan, you mentioned a recent case you had with potentially national implications. Can you tell us about that case?
Sure. This has to do with the inducement of private physicians to bring their patients to a particular hospital versus another. The hospital in question, these are allegations. A couple disclaimers. The case was settled for approximately $45 million. The whistleblower client, in that instance, a compliance officer, received more than $12 million of the $45 million for being the whistleblower. But the allegations were, they're a little tricky, but if you follow me here, you'll follow how it happened. So folks there are plenty of folks on the call here, I'm sure, are familiar with what are called global surgery codes. So let's say a patient has to have a brain surgery, and there's going to be a global surgery code covers three bases. There is your preoperative work, in other words, the testing that you need to undergo to make sure you're okay to be operated on and healthy enough to be operated on. There's the operation itself is point number two, conducted by the surgeon. And then there's the postoperative care where you're recuperating. So let's say for a particular brain operation, all three of those codes, all three of those bases are billed all together in what's called a global bundled code. Let's say it's $1,000 that the physician can bill, right? Let's say hypothetically it's $100 for the preoperative care, $800 for the surgery, and $100 for the postoperative care. The allegation in the Christiana case was that Christiana employed nurse practitioners, not doing anything wrong themselves, were providing the preoperative and postoperative care, and the physician was effectively coming in and doing the surgery, but billing for all three pieces instead of just billing for the $800 for the surgery. So how does that benefit the physician? Two ways. One, they get paid an extra $200 for work they didn't perform. And two, they don't have to be there. They can be out on the golf course or out with their families doing something else instead of coming in and doing preoperative or postoperative work. How could it have been done legally? Very easily. If the nurse practitioners that were providing the preoperative and postoperative care worked for those doctors, it would be perfectly fine for the doctor to bill the $1,000 and get the full $1,000 because the expenses for providing that care were on the doctor's dime. Right. That's not the allegation in the case. Was that the doctors were just performing the narrow or the surgical piece. Now, I just want to get this in. I see I have a question. Hold that thought. Why would Christiana do this? Allegedly. They allegedly did this because that when the doctor can bill for $1,000 and bill and get $1,000 instead of only getting $800, it makes them want to bring their cases to that hospital versus another hospital where they can only bill for the surgery itself. And what does Christiana get? Well, Christiana, in this instance, the allegations were they got the money that they billed the government for the OR and all of the care that preceded and postdated the surgery, which is many thousands of dollars more than what the physician received. That's called the facility fee. So the facility fees added up to a huge amount of money. And again, all of this was allegations only, but we did settle the case, and I'll stop there and let you see if there's something you want to get into more miscellaneously.
So basically, if I'm understanding it right, the doc inappropriately miscodes the whole scene, and it just puts a snowball effect of money that is improperly billed and fraudulently obtained.
We didn't sue the doctors,
right?
We went, although we alleged that they benefited financially, and that's why the whole scheme worked. We sued Christiana because we alleged that the hospital was inducing the physicians by providing the nurse practitioners. And the other effectively free employees, right?
Right.
And the other interesting aspect was we were able to establish that Christiana wasn't billing for the nurse practitioners themselves. In other words, it would have been justified for Christiana to bill for the preoperative and postoperative care, but the evidence we established, or the allegations were, and the evidence that we saw corroborated the allegations, is that Christiana wasn't billing for the preoperative, postoperative care, and therefore the physicians were able to.
I have a bunch of comments. In fact, I can put them up. I think you can see them too, but I believe I can put them in the room. Look at that.
All right. Can everyone see that?
I believe they can. I can. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah. I can read it. This was an issue.
No, I see it. I see it here.
Right.
Yeah, this is Miss Atwood. This is exactly what I'm talking about, where you're being requested to reach diagnoses. And look, if you reach a correct diagnosis that previously was undiscovered, you've done the patient a favor, right? They were undiagnosed. But if you're getting pressured to make a diagnosis that's not medically justified, then that's the problem. Yeah, that's exactly what the report I was just talking about that came out today is speaking to.
I have another comment here from Diane Matthews, who I'm very familiar with. She is a nurse attorney. So let's see what she here.
One of my most interesting cases was versus a hospital and police department, med mal, and excessive force. Remember intervening, superseding causation from law school. Yes, I do, Miss Matthews. It's a long time ago, but yes, I can imagine that was a challenge to prove.
And then we're getting some LinkedIn. I can't see their names, but we're getting some LinkedIn questions here. Let's put them up.
LinkedIn user about whether it's fraud for a nurse to be assigned 3 ICU level patients. I can't speak to that reg standing here or sitting here because I'd have to read it and study it. Happy to talk to you about that at a different time, or my email information is on the screen there. But there's definitely understaffing problems that happen frequently in both hospitals and nursing homes, where there's people, the nursing home's getting paid or the hospital's getting paid a certain amount of money per day, and it's to their financial benefit to staff the unit or the hall with less people than are necessary to provide even the minimum of care. So that can be fraud, but I'm not familiar with that specific reg. I'd have to study it.
I could speak for almost all nurses in the whole country. Our biggest complaint ever is always going to be the hospital never staffs properly or proportionately and makes things this isn't fraud or whistleblowing, but it makes things unsafe and terrible working conditions and a potential malpractice for patients. But that's a common complaint that is constantly in throughout the occupation. Let's look at another comment. Here's that one. Oh, no. Is that the same one I just had up there? Maintains. Hold on 1 second.
I think that's a similar. It may have been.
Yeah, that's similar, right? Let's go down to Sarah here. The physicians were not honest. Oh, this, I think what you're talking about, seems like they slipped away easily. Poor ethical choices on their end. The bad apples.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, but sometimes the physicians, get prosecuted also. I mean, we have cases right now where we're pursuing group practices and others that are involved in referral schemes. And it just so happened in the Christiana case for various reasons, that wasn't really viable to do. But in other fact patterns, it can be, and we have done it in the past, and we're in fact doing that now. And so some doctors do wind up on the wrong end of a False Claims Act whistleblower suit.
Wow. That's actually really interesting. So you've touched on some really interesting topics with the whole healthcare system in general, and on the billing and what kind of practices that go on that we don't even realize as nurses, or we do realize as nurses. Dan, if there's anyone who knows about any of the frauds which we've been discussing today, or any other kind of fraud, any other kind, what options are available?
There's a few. Most good healthcare systems, whether it's and offices, whether it's a specialty physician's practice or more commonly a larger entity like a hospital or a medical device manufacturer or a pharmaceutical company, all those types of entities have compliance programs. And within any of those companies' compliance programs, there's going to be a reporting function. And so you always have the option of reporting something internally. Of course, that presents some risk, right? Because if the compliance program is on paper, robust and meant to help, root out problematic behavior, then great. And reporting internally could be a good option that results in correction of the bad behavior and no negative effects on the reporting employee. In other words, the employee that's raising the concern and bringing it to the compliance office. The trouble is that most of the time, most of the clients that I wind up talking to face instances where they did try and report things internally and wound up getting the wrong end of the stick, meaning, they started to get treated more, poorly, marginalized in some way at work, kept out of meetings that they normally would have been attending, how their job responsibilities are shrunk to where they're no longer allowed to visibility into what they were complaining about so that they don't continue to, be the squeaky wheel. I've seen people get demoted. I've seen people get fired. In fact, a lot of the time, the way people find me is they get fired and they're looking at their, looking for employment lawyers to help, fix what happened, which is them getting fired for doing nothing wrong. And then that's when they learn for the first time that there is a False Claims Act and there's an opportunity to do something about it. That's what I do when someone comes to me and they're looking to fix something. We can do both. We can help the person who is the whistleblower, and we can correct the problematic conduct. And that's what the False Claims Act and whistleblowing is all about. It's not an easy road. It never is. It's long, but it's people. My experience with most nurses above all others in the healthcare system seem to be focused on patient care, and more than physicians, more than anyone. And we've had plenty of nurse clients, and they seem to be almost universally preoccupied with making sure their patients get the right care first. And sometimes a whistleblower lawsuit is the only way to do that. But it can be rough. It can be difficult. But most people that really, really, really care about it, patient care, and they see something that's wrong, we can protect them.
Did you mention to me that, say a nurse was a whistleblower, that their identity can be anonymous until a certain level or a certain point? I can't remember what you said, but I remember that in the conversation.
The answer is sort of. There are protections, first off, in the law, anti-retaliation protections, even if someone's identity did become known. But a False Claims Act suit is filed under seal. In other words, the only people that know about the lawsuit when it's initially filed would be me and the client and the government, the federal prosecutors and state prosecutors that get the case. The cases normally remain under seal, an average of at least anywhere between 1 and 3 years. I would say the average of time when it remains under seal. And then if the case is successful, in that instance, the whistleblower's name will normally become public, but it's also becoming public in connection with a successful prosecution. And normally these cases are, multi-million dollar cases, and the whistleblower gets anywhere between 15 and 30% of the money. So like I said earlier, we had a, whistleblower case settle in the mid 40 millions, and the client got, or I think it was 42 something million, and the client got more than $12 million. So in that instance, the person was pretty much, they had to pay their lawyers, me and others, to, we got a portion of that, but the client walked away with, a giant recovery and is financially well off for the rest of his life. Doesn't always happen that way, but anyway, getting back to confidentiality, when a case is successful, the whistleblower's name does come out. You can also file what we call John or Jane Doe lawsuits, where the whistleblower's name isn't even used in the lawsuit, and then that is a even more conservative, protective sort of way to bring a False Claims Act lawsuit. But again, if the government gets interested and gets involved and the case succeeds, the whistleblower's name, whoever Jane or John Doe is, would still come out. So it's a limited degree of confidentiality for a couple, 3 years, 1 to 3 years, I would say on average. And then if the case is successful, the name would come out. If the case is not successful, normally we could, if we filed as a Jane or a John Doe, then the whistleblower's name would not be on the public record.
And I think you mentioned to me with the statute of limitations and how long things can happen, like hypothetically use me for an example, and I want to be one of your whistleblower clients, but as nurses, we all have 10 and 15 different employers on our resume. Can I be a whistleblower on a previous employer that was 6 years ago and they don't even know me anymore, but I know stuff that went on there?
The answer is yes. A whistleblower can be anyone that either knows or even becomes knowledgeable of something that they didn't personally see. So I've had clients who were told something by someone else who worked at X, Y, and Z, but they got enough details of the situation that they were able to relay it to me, and we filed a suit on their behalf. But the answer is yes. It doesn't. There's a 6-year the statute of limitations is anywhere between 6 and 10 years. It depends on the circumstances, but it's a minimum of 6. So if you're, 5 years ago, you were at, XYZ hospital and you saw bad behavior happening, and you can relay it to a qualified whistleblower lawyer, you can still bring a federal False Claims Act lawsuit and recover.
Because I think that puts a few people at ease, because I had discussions with that they always felt that they only could be a whistleblower on their current employer. And as you just said, that's obviously not the case.
Nope. In fact, you don't even have to be an employee or even a former employee. I mean, people, like I said, anyone who has knowledge of the situation, sufficient information to sketch out the fraud and provide some details can be a whistleblower.
All right. Well, I think this has been extremely interesting topic and helpful. Your email is up on the board there. That's dmiller@wmhwlaw.com. And if anybody wants to send you an email.
Yeah, anybody that happy to, and anything that any communications with any attorney, regardless where in the United States you are privileged. The rules of confidentiality and privilege are the same for people who are just reaching out and kind of testing the waters to see if maybe they might have something. Those communications are all completely confidential, including any emails to my email address. And either I or another one of the whistleblower lawyers that works with me would respond to anybody's inquiry.
Is an email the best avenue, probably in this type of situation, to make the first?
It is. Yeah, it is. You can go on my bio too. On the my phone number's on the bio. My bio on the page. Walden Mockton Harron is the name of the firm. So that's another way. But email's kind of the easier way, because my cell phone rings so many times in a given day that I'm easier to reach on email.
Great. Well, I think we're through with comments and questions. I think this has been very helpful and a very interesting topic for us in the medical legal world. Like I've told you, most of my viewers here are legal nurse consultants, and a lot of these viewers are on my LinkedIn page, which are other nurses and attorneys as well. So I think this has been a great chit chat on the areas of fraud.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim.
All right. And I think we're going to call it a day, and I appreciate you coming on.
All right. Take care.